Hi, I'm Tom's brother Pat, and I'll be sharing with you some of the things that the family thinks were so special about Tom. From the moment my mom and dad brought him home from the hospital, Tom lit up our lives. I think most of you know Tom had 8 brothers and sisters. He often said he was glad he came from a large family. Family was the center of Tom's life from birth to death. His whole life revolved around family. When we were young, our sisters, Bibi and Denny, taught us Irish dancing. We performed together as the Dancing Nolans. We danced at venues throughout the Southland, the Shrine Auditorium, the Los Angeles Philharmonic, Bovard Auditorium at USC, the LA County Fair, and many, many performances at Disneyland. We would enter the stage in twos, starting with the tallest. When Tiny Tom and Maureen danced onto the stage, perfectly in step with the rest of us, it brought down the house. The LA Herald said we stole the show at the International Folk Dance Festival. Faith was central to life in the Nolan household. For instance, Tom and I served Mass together often. We both thought it was a privilege to kneel together at the foot of the altar and hold the paten under the communicant's chin as they received the host. Tom's service to God continued the rest of his life. He frequently spoke at Curcio meetings and sang in the jail choir. He was active in every parish he lived in and developed strong friendships with his fellow parishioners. Tom had a sunny disposition and a positive outlook on life. However, on one occasion, Mom didn't think so. She'd assigned Tom the chore of vacuuming the upstairs hallway. When she realized she couldn't hear the vacuum, she called Tom to the top of the stairs and said, "Get to work right now." Tom responded emphatically, "No." In exasperation, Mom pleaded, "Tom, for once in your life, can't you be positive?" To which Tom shot back, "Positive, no." That cracked all of us up, including my mom. But Tom really was a positive person, always ready with encouragement for all of us and his friends and teammates. He was the spark plug of his Little League team and his basketball team. When Tom grew older, his interests shifted to horses. After school and on weekends, Tom and his friend Bob Lamoureux could be found at the stables exercising horses. Now, Maureen suggests that it was the young girls riding the horses that made the real attraction for Tom and Bob. She might have a point there, because it was through riding that Tom met Lori. Mom called the youngest 4 children the small 4. We did almost everything together. Each week, Shelley, Tom, Maureen, and I walked down to the Cornell Theater and watched movies part of the Family Film Festival. Each summer, we took swimming lessons at McCambridge Park, just a block and a half from our house. And by happy circumstance, the 4 of us were at USC simultaneously for a few years. We arranged our schedules so we'd have one night free each week to pal around for family night. Tom's love of horses led to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Dick Sacco, the beloved original Tommy Trojan, was badly injured. He asked Tom to ride Traveler in his place. Tom jumped at the chance. He loved the thrill of coming out of the Coliseum tunnel, racing around the track, and then rearing in front of the cheering student body. He stayed for long after the games to pose with fans and their children for photos, and even let the children pet Traveler. Tom had an inquiring mind and loved the ocean. He combined those interests by studying oceanography at USC. He charmed his way onto USC's boat as a crewman as they traversed the waters off Catalina and down to Baja. Tom's love of water and sea life started very early. When he was just 4 years old, we vacationed in Crestline. When we arrived at Lake Gregory, Tom ran pell-mell into the lake and dove in. When he popped up, sputtering with water streaming down his face, he called out, "I didn't see no fishies, just bubbos." We knew right then that Tom was destined to become an oceanographer. His love for adventure took him to Alaska as a hunting and fishing guide. The owners of the lodge asked Tom to look after the place when it was closed down for the winter. That required him to winter over alone. That's a good example of how comfortable Tom was in his own skin. He spent months alone in sub-zero temperatures with only books, howling wolves, and an occasional elk for company. He told me a little secret. He had discovered a surefire system for determining that spring was near. The pile in the outhouse was almost high enough to touch his bottom. And I'm sure you all realize that Tom is a very good salesman. So good, in fact, he was able to convince Lori to stay over one winter with him. Tom's eclectic interests led to a wide range of jobs, training dolphins and starring in the shows at Marineland and SeaWorld, starting his own sporting goods business in Angel Fire, New Mexico, working on the crew of a Japanese research vessel off the Aleutian Islands, the only member of the crew that didn't speak Japanese. But that didn't stop our garrulous Tom from having a great time with the crew. Tom told me there was one drawback, however. He had to eat a lot of fish heads in his rice bowls. And of course he was thrilled to work at JPL as the capstone of his life's work. Imagine being the first person on Earth to get a peek at photos from the rover as they were beamed down from Mars. He loved giving tours at JPL and traveled the world to give lectures on oceanography and satellites. He even went to such faraway places as Malaysia and Morocco. Marianne was a great companion for him on those trips. She shares his love of travel and adventure. And of course, he'd go scuba diving wherever he could. He told me he just marveled at the many colorful fish God had created. After the shocking diagnosis of his brain tumor, Tom completely surrendered to God's will. Of course, Tom and all of us prayed for a miracle, but he also accepted that God might call him home. Faced with that challenge, Tom resolved to live life to its fullest, and he did. During his last year, Tom, Marianne, and their family frequently went to the beach. They traveled to Mexico and even went on a cruise. Many of my friends have told me they found Tom's courage and faith inspiring. I think Tom lived the life Hunter Thompson described. Quote, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride!'" Tom, we miss you a lot, but we know you're in heaven with Jesus and our parents and loved ones. You're no longer in pain, but are experiencing joy that will last forever, and will be reunited soon enough. Hasta la vista, dear brother.